So we're picking up where we left off. You may have to tap
I-
on the
I-
thing.
I'm here.
Okay.
I can
So
see
the
you.
so the photo that you were talking about, I think, is this one.
Yes, that's it. Isn't that a beautiful photo of her?
Yes, it is.
And I remember her at that time. For some reason, I remember she was 27 years old.
Oh, okay. And it says your loving wife, Mary, on there, I think is what it says.
What a beautiful girl. And that's how I remember her. It's so pretty. In my girlhood.
Right.
Oh, that's a gorgeous photo. And there is another photo of her. She's wearing a black dress. She had it taken in Yakima. And I learned, now that one right there that you just went by with our little group.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. Mother is bending over.
Right.
And I can almost remember what she was wearing, but I can't. It feels like I do. Anyway, those are the little cousins and siblings that trailed around after our mother and her sisters and cousins, and who were loved by our grandparents and so on. Anyway, so the one of her in a black dress is just a headshot, and
I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, I saw it. It's on here.
Oh, did I scroll past it?
That picture of mother looking down on a baby.
Yeah.
That we just went by.
That one?
No, it's just her head looking down there.
Oh, this one.
Yes. I believe that is the gold jacket that went with the suit.
Okay.
I don't know who the baby is.
I think I heard that it was, well, I wrote Nancy or Jay is baby. And I think I saw somewhere, figured out somewhere else it's Nancy. I think it's Nancy.
Maybe.
Let's see, I wrote here, Marcel thinks the baby is Nancy or Jay. Okay, still don't know for sure.
Maybe. I honestly don't know either. In any case, I do believe that was that gold jacket.
While we're talking about mom, there's a baby picture of her.
I think it's just adorable.
Yes.
Just really so cute. And there's a really lovely picture of her when she was maybe about 13. Wait. You went by too fast.
I just have this one labeled as her at 13. Is
Where?
that the one
I can't see. There's no picture.
Oh,
here. Yes, this one. That was. Do you know who Mae West was?
Vaguely. I remember the name. I can't think of, I don't have a picture in my mind. I know I've heard the name, but I can't think of actually who she was.
Well, she was a very sexy, well-built woman in the early movies. Yeah, early movies. And
early movies.
And she was known for sly sayings and things like that. But she was blonde and curvy. And anyway, mother said that when she was a teenager, she was often called Mae West.
Wow.
Even and I'm sure she didn't have sly sayings, but she probably had a very nice figure. Because I think she had a very nice figure for a long time. Well, let's see. Weiser. Okay, so living in Grandma Compton's house. It was a real challenge for mother. The first place, she didn't have Lanny. And
so
then
you were how old now at this point? So as dad leaves for the war, you're how old?
Um, well, by the time we were living in Grandma Compton's house, I think I was in the 3rd grade. I might have been in the 2nd going into the 3rd.
So 8 years old or somewhere around there, 7, 8, something like that.
I don't think I was 8 yet because I was baptized in an anaconda, and that was after this. So I was probably about 7.
Okay.
I was always an age behind my classmates because I started to school early, just the way my birthday fell. Anyway, so if I was 7, 8, 9, 10, then Lanny was probably 9 or 10, and Marcel also. We 3 sold newspapers.
Oh,
We and I think the newspaper was called the Weiser Signal. Something, I think it's mentioned in Lanny's autobiography, and I think he names it. But I don't know why we did that, if we needed the money. I just don't remember, but we did do it. And I have memories, Lanny does, and so does Marcel, of standing on the street corner with the newspapers. I'm sure we must have called out the news, but I don't really recall that. I just remember going into a bar and all these men sitting on stools, and you know, a lot of them bought my paper. But I don't remember what Mother thought about that or why we were doing it. But Mother wasn't, in those days, she did not spare the rod to spoil the child. She did spank us, and I can remember she saying that it really hurt her hand to spank us. Anyway, but I do remember it was a very windy day. We lived in Grandma Compton's house, and I apparently was told I shouldn't go outside, but I did. I don't remember being told that, but I walked down the street and the trees were just swaying and blowing, and it was really quite a nice feeling for me. And Mother came after me with a switch and switched me home. I slept on a day bed in the dining room, and so when Mother was afraid, sometimes at night, I don't know if this happened more than once, but she came. Somehow I ended up sitting up with her. Just, while she was concerned about noises outside, particularly afraid of those men who were peeking into windows. And one time she was worried about something, and I don't remember what, but she and I walked around the block or something. I think
okay.
she just, I think, I don't think I could have been much of a comfort, but apparently I was something of a comfort. I don't imagine I said anything. I think I was just probably there. But what I remember about this mainly is she had a lot of anxiety about being alone, perhaps, about Daddy being in the service. And when we lived in Anaconda and Daddy was on scout trips up in the mountains with Boy Scouts, and he wasn't home when he was supposed to be home, I can remember sitting up with her then, and she would just be pacing, waiting for Daddy to come home. So I think it's just that I was a girl and I was the oldest.
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, Lanny and I, I'm sure I was not the instigator of this. Lanny somehow got some cigarettes And we sat up on the barn at Grandma Compton's house. And so I guess smoked at least one of them because I remember it was pretty awful. But anyway, we thought we thought we were invisible sitting up there watching kids play down in the yard. And but obviously we weren't. And I don't remember how we got down, but I do remember we ended up in the kitchen sitting in chairs with mother scolding us. And we probably had to sit there a while. And then we were sent out to get coal there was a little pot-bellied stove in the living room. And then of course there was a coal stove in the kitchen. So at that time, coal trucks delivered coal, a big truck with the whole back full of coal, and it would tip up and the coal would dump into people's cellars or coal sheds. Or anyway, Grandma had a coal shed.
We've got a coal chute in our basement of the house that I live in. Is an old coal chute where they would dump the coal down into like a large closet area.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what that was, very common at that time. And so that your house is pretty old. Anyway, well, Grandma had a coal shed and we were sent out to get coal. And for some reason we took a match with us. I don't know if it was to see. I have no idea why we had a match. But anyway, after we came back an hour or so later or something, big flames were just eating up that coal shed and all the coal that was in it. And that really gave Mother a lot of grief. In the first place, that was a lot of money. But even more importantly, it was Grandma's coal shed. And she fussed and fussed about how was she going to tell Grandma about her coal shed being gone. Mother loved to share things she thought was beautiful, like flowers or a scene or something. And walking with Mother, even way back then, I can remember her pointing out something beautiful, like a beautiful yard or a beautiful flower. And in the winter, when we lived there in Grandma's house, she was so tired of winter. And she promised me a nickel if I could find a blade of grass. So I remember walking home from school, searching, every time there was a little bit of a melted patch, where the grass comes through, I would be searching for a blade of green grass for my mother.
Well, I've inherited that from her. I just can't wait for spring.
Oh, yeah, I can identify with that. And can you smell spring coming even while the snow is still on the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that living in Provo. But anyway, I think Mother was very much of a nature person. She loved flowers. She loved animals. She loved the gardens. And Grandma did have all around one side of her yard beautiful, I don't even know the names of those flowers, tall flowers with stalks, with beautiful long stems of blossoms, and that was a particular pleasure to me. And Mother, I can remember Mother looking, bending over, and just enjoying those things. When Daddy came home from the service, we all knew he was coming. This might have been when he came home from a furlough. I can't remember which, but I just remember it was night and we were all waiting for him to come. And I think Well, I just remember him coming. I'm trying to remember if he said, "Is anybody home?" or just some silly thing, but I can't recall. I do remember Mother flying out the door and into his arms, and all of us running out, and just to have him home was really special.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying to him, "Do you want to see the baby?" And so she took him into the bedroom where Afton's crib was. And anyway, that was special.
Yeah.
And there was a man, Jack Adams was his name, while Mother was gone. And he was the brother of Lowell Adams. He was a relative in any case. And I don't know why he wasn't in the service. Lowell Adams was married to Lucille.
Okay.
But Jack was often at our house, helping do things, fix things. He was just there, and he seemed like he was a very nice man to all of us.
Okay.
He took me for a ride on his running board, and I fell off and hit my head.
Oh.
And apparently I was knocked out for a short time. I just remember lying on that daybed in the dining room and Mother scolding him for letting me fall asleep. Apparently she wasn't home after that fall. But generally, I think he really, looking back, and some things I remember, I think he probably was in love with our mother. Or at least, in love might be the wrong thing to say, but something very special.
Okay.
And you saw how pretty she was in that picture with her
Sure.
$1 million smile.
Yeah.
And then with and needing her husband home.
Yeah.
Not that he ever fixed anything much, but there's something just
Right.
to be there. In any case, they did write beautiful letters back and forth, as we know.
Yeah, I really love reading. I think I only have one letter of Mom to Dad, but there was a bunch of letters that Dad wrote to Mom. If there's more letters that Mom wrote to Dad, I haven't seen them. I think I've only saw one, maybe two.
There are a lot. There were quite a few of Mother writing to him,
Okay.
and I am really sorry that those letters have kind of been spread around and not lost particularly, but I guess you'd call it lost if you don't know where they are. But yes, Mother did write to Daddy.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure she did.
yes, and they were very sweet letters, and from him to her. In any case, when Daddy came home from the service, I remember us walking to church with Daddy pulling us in a wagon.
Oh.
And Mother and Daddy walking to church, and people greeting him. And it just seemed like a very happy occasion that they were together, and we were in church. And I suppose it wasn't too long after that, though I can't tell you for sure because I don't know the date. The date they were sealed in the temple, I don't know how long that was after Daddy came home from the service.
Okay.
But I believe it was after. And Marcel and I have both very strong memories of that train ride and being in Salt Lake. And
so you rode the train from Weiser to Salt Lake?
From Weiser to Salt Lake, right.
Wow. You would have you would have gone right by or through Brigham City. There's,
Probably.
I mean, there's a train, the train tracks go right by here with the, just a little side note, when they originally built the railroad, when they were building a set of tracks going from the west coast towards the east and from the east coast towards the west, and they met in the middle, and where they met is about 15 miles outside of
Oh,
Brigham City. It's just
It's-
right over here,
is that what do they call that?
the Golden
Oh.
Spike
I know, but isn't there a word for that place?
Promontory.
Okay. And so it's that close to Brigham City.
Yeah, it's
I didn't ever know that.
the kids, my kids go to a grade school called Promontory, and it's kind of named after that.
That is so interesting. I had no idea.
So you would have gone right by here when you little, if you took a train from Weiser to Salt Lake.
Yes.
If only the railroad tracks could talk.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Going, in any case, I was aware that was a very special time. I can't tell you why or anything. I just had that feeling.
So you would have been 8 or so years old. Would you have been 9 yet, or were you 8, or do you know?
No, I wouldn't have been 8 yet, because I didn't get baptized till I was in Anaconda. I
Okay.
mean, in Anaconda. And so that would have been before that.
Okay.
Yeah. So in any case, I could go on and just talk about the experience in Weiser and in the temple and those kinds of things, but that's not what this is about. So that would have to be another time, I guess.
No, whatever, you might as well. I mean, you go with the flow of things, and it's tell it whatever's coming to mind, share.
Well, we did take that wonderful train ride. It was so scary, though. Marcel and I were both so afraid it was going to tip over, and we kept, and it would be on a slant as it went around a ridge or something, and we would stand on the other side of the car just to try to keep it from tipping over.
You did
And
a good job.
Yeah, it didn't tip over. Anyway, and looking out the window, when a long train kind of snakes along, and you can see a part of it snaking along ahead of you. And that was such an interesting, it was all a very curious experience, just the train ride. I don't remember Mother or Daddy on that train ride, but Daddy always had a real love for trains.
Oh,
And when he lived with us here, he and I went to an art show in San Diego, and it was all about trains, and he just loved it.
okay.
And so I'm dodging back now, dipping back to when we lived when he worked on the railroad. And they were, let's see, and Bruce was a baby. So, and I don't know if anyone else has brought this up, but Bruce, after Bruce was born, Mother had 4 babies in quick succession. And she had a kind of a nervous breakdown at that point. She just had, I don't know. I honestly, I can't, she never told me, except she did tell me that. And, but at that time, Daddy worked on the railroad. And I remember he had boils. And I somehow connected them with the railroad at that time. And
Okay.
I don't know what Daddy did. I just know he worked on the railroad. And of course, his father worked on the railroad.
Right.
And Mother's father, for a period of time, worked on the railroad. And so the railroad was a pretty important thing in the lives of both sides of our family for at least a period of time.
Well, if I understand correctly, it was employment opportunities with the railroad that took them out of Millville, which was a half hour to my east, and out of Ogden, which is a half hour to my south. Dad's and mom's families both migrated up to Idaho because of employment with railroad, I think, if I'm connecting the dots right.
I think that's true of the Comptons. I don't think it's true of the Chandlers. The Chandlers, and there are some histories, and I think I might have put some of them in the Compton Union when I was doing it, written by Grandpa's sisters, a sister. But with the Chandlers, they were primarily farmers.
Right.
And I think they just went from one place to another. I don't know how many of those places before they ended up in Weiser, looking for that kind of an opportunity, having mostly to do with farming. But Grandpa, when mother was born in Portland.
Right.
And it seems to me the Chandler family was relatively nearby, but Grandpa was kind of an itinerant worker. He would go from place to place looking for work. And one of those jobs at one point, as I recall, was working on the railroad. I could have that wrong.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we don't have, well, maybe Anne would know better. Nita would certainly know better, but I don't. In any case, I think their connection with the railroad was not nearly as strong as the Comptons.
Okay.
Grandpa Compton, the Comptons lived in Ogden, right there where the railroad, there was a
Right.
big railroad center. And he was moved from place to place, having to do with the railroad. So getting back to Daddy's boils, I can remember Mother lighting matches, and he had these boils on his back. And it seems to me she would put that lighted, not the flame, but the hot match on his boil.
Wow.
Now, this is a little girl's memory.
Right.
So I don't know where boils come from. I speak from side, and I'm sure they do, but I don't know why. In any case, at that time, we lived on Butterfield, and that's a road in Weiser, and there were and we had, Mother and Daddy had a fair amount of land in that house, and I'm sure it was a rented house. And that land was used by one of our aunts, I think Aunt Fern, who is Grandpa Chandler's sister. She farmed a little bit of it. She had a big garden beside the driveway. And then Mother and Daddy had, for the welfare farm, I mean, it wasn't a welfare farm, but it was for the welfare somehow. They had hogs. They raised hogs. I think the rest of it, chickens and rabbits, was for us. And so I can remember Mother flying out the back door, to get the pigs would get out of their pen or something. And Mother flying out the door to get those pigs rounded up and back in where they were supposed to be. All these things, as a little girl, you just watch.
Right.
And you try to put two and two together, which never makes four, because you just don't understand enough to make that happen. So, but looking back, I always think of what Mother endured. And a lot of it was a pleasure, no doubt. And a lot of it was just such hard work.
Yeah.
She had mother, at best, mother had the old washing machine and wash tubs that I'm sure I don't know if you have seen, but we called it a wringer washer.
Okay.
And at times you had to turn the wringer yourself to run after the clothes were washed. They'd gone round and round or swish, swish, swish in the washer. Then they had to be run through the wringer into the wash tubs, into the rinse tubs. And there were 2 rinse tubs. And then, of course, that wringer would be moved from one rinse tub to the other. It had a kind of an arm. And there was a time when that wringer had to be turned by your arm. And then, of course, it became easier when that was an electric thing. So mother had that kind of a washer until after Yakima. I left home when we lived in Yakima, so I don't know what kind she had after that. But I do remember wash day. Piles, big piles of clothes around the kitchen floor.
Right.
And it seemed to me that was Monday. That was, and then think of all the ironing.
Right.
Because we didn't have the kinds of fabrics we have now.
Mhm.
All the ironing, all that washing. Mother was the main gardener. I mean, mother was the gardener. Whenever they had a garden, and she was the one who planted, who reaped, and of course she tried to get us to be a part of it. I do remember picking tomato worms off the tomato plants and absolutely hating it. They terrified me. And I'm sure that I was supposed to do weeding, and I'm sure I didn't do a very good job of anything. So mother was an extremely hard worker from day one. But certainly by the time we got to, out on Butterfield, 4 children in quick succession. There's a funny little story about Daddy, but and we thought it was very funny. I don't know what mother thought. I think mother would tell Daddy about something we had done wrong. And
Okay.
so he would say, okay, go out and get a stick so I can spank you. So we'd go out and get a little twig and bring it back. No, that's not big enough. And so it was just a game. So I don't know if we ever were sufficiently punished or not. And also in Butterfield, we had a rocking chair apparently, and Daddy would hold us in his arms and rock us, and then he'd shake us and say, "Are you asleep yet? Are you asleep yet?" So much about Daddy was not meant to be a grown-up man. And anyway, but mother, if you're the one bearing the children, if you're the one having the pregnancies and your varicose veins are killing you, and your husband is a delightful human being, but not very present,
Right.
that's hard.
Yeah.
And our dear mother was patient through it all. Well, patient in a sense. I know she tried to express herself, especially as time went on, but anyway, that's and of course I was a very young girl, so it's really hard to know. But mother was, I'm jumping around, so sorry.
That's okay.
When we got to Anaconda, I told you about the golden green ball and how mother looked so pretty with her upsweep and so on. And Afton was just a toddler at that time. When we lived in Yakima, in Toppenish, mother was still a very young woman. I'm trying to think when Nancy was born in 1948. And mother was born in 1918. So would she have been 30?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's, we know how young that is.
Yeah,
And
I was almost 30 when I got married.
oh goodness.
I got started late.
Well, that's wise. That's wise. Anyways, again, she was such a pretty woman. And, but we were really poor in Toppenish. And I can remember being at church and someone said, "Why isn't your mother here?" Or something like that. And I said, "Because she didn't have anything to wear." And whoever that woman was said, "Oh, that's not a good excuse," or something like that. And it sticks with me, I'm sure, because of what that woman said. But
Right.
mother often didn't have something to wear. But Saturday nights were always from Anaconda on, certainly through Toppenish. I remember Saturday nights were some kind of an ordeal because we had once a week baths, and that was bath night.
Right.
And in Anaconda, we did have a bathroom and it had a shower, as I recall. But what I do remember, I don't remember using that shower. We had a big tin tub and we bathed in that tin tub. And of course, mother had to wash our hair over a sink. And then she would put curlers in our hair and we would be ready for church almost and sit and listen to, especially in Anaconda, I remember this, sit and listen to the Saturday night radio programs. One of them was Truth or Consequences.
Oh.
You should, that was a very funny show. And maybe another one was Amos and Andy. That used to give me a stomach ache because they always got in trouble. It never turned out well. And I can't remember, but they were Saturday night radio shows. And so we just sit on the floor all scrubbed and curled and watching the radio.
Right.
But it was pretty much everybody, except maybe mother, who was probably ironing for the next day. So she had to iron our clothes, wash our clothes, wash us, except in Toppenish, we could bathe ourselves. But I do remember her washing my hair over the sink in the kitchen in Toppenish, and curling, putting curlers in her hair. And then the next day, and this is where my sort of, I don't know, I developed some bad feelings at this point because Grandma Compton lived with us from time to time. And in this case, she might not have been living with us, but Daddy might have picked her up to bring her over to go to church with us. But she would be sitting in the living room with her purse in her lap, rocking back and forth pretty hard. She was a stickler for being on time.
Okay.
Amazing that Daddy did not catch that bug.
Right.
But anyway, and mother would be rushing around, ironing, combing hair, all those things. And then Daddy would come home, sit down and play the piano because the priesthood meeting was in the morning.
Right.
So he would come back, sit down at the piano and start playing, and Grandma would be rocking and mother would be working. And then there would be some kind of an explosion, a minor one, about that were going to be late. And
Who
and
who
mother,
would who would explode? Grandma Compton or mom, or who was?
I think it was Daddy and probably Grandma Compton, because that's kind of what I remember. So, and Mother would be left behind because she'd gotten everyone else ready and by herself. And then she would, then everyone would go. And maybe she might really have liked having that time to herself. I'm not sure. But I developed a not very happy feeling about that situation. Even then, I thought that there was something unfair about it. But
Yeah.
anyway, Mother made wonderful Sunday dinners with fresh chicken, the head just chopped off. And she would dunk those chickens in hot boiling water and take off the feathers and take out the innards. And she probably was pregnant because so often she was. And then we'd have mashed potatoes and dill pickles. I love to have mashed potatoes and gravy and a piece of chicken and dill pickles in my mouth at the same time, because that was so delicious. Anyway, Mother just worked so hard. And in that house in Toppenish, she had a wringer washer with the 2 tubs. It was out on the porch, and she'd wheel it into the kitchen, and she'd have to heat the water for the washer on the stove, on the coal stove, and then pour it into the washer. So nothing was easy then in
Right.
those days.
Right.
Anyway, I bet you have to go.
Well, I don't have to go, but you've given us a treasure trove of memories, and I really appreciate it. And thank you so much. And
Well, go
we
ahead.
should, I was gonna say, I know you have more memories because we haven't got very far into your teenage years, I don't think.
No, there are more memories, of course, but and I know I've been all over the place. I haven't been very chronological.
That's
But
okay.
I guess, I started out with what a very, very different world we lived in at that time in Weiser, with family
Yeah.
all around, and Mother being in her early 20s and Daddy in his, and basically they were just kids.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of fun with each other and with their families. And Daddy was in scouting, and he would have the Boy Scouts over and have challenges for them. He told me more than once that his favorite job in his whole life was scouting. And I remember at least on one occasion, it probably was in the fall, in the autumn, Mother made chili beans. And I just remember how she made them for, the Boy Scouts, and probably there was something else, but I just remember how delicious that was, and how much I loved hearing those Boy Scouts whooping and hollering down by the creek. Daddy had strung a rope from one side of the creek to the other, and they had to hand walk it all across. And if they fell in, I don't know, they didn't get their badge or something. I don't know. And that was kind of a dumb thing to do on a cold night. But Daddy was a boy for a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
And loved to have fun. And it would be interesting to know. Well, it's easy to know how much of Mother's long held dislike for men came from her experience with her father, and his impatience and his unkindness, as she saw it, toward her mother.
Right.
One can see that easily where mothers would have come from, in part. And one doesn't know for sure how much of Daddy's desire to always be having fun and make things into fun came from the sadness of having an alcoholic father
Hmm.
and parents who were not happy together.
Right.
But in any case, the two of them together through lots of challenges, financial, emotional, physical health, etc. They made our family, and we have beautiful memories from
Yeah.
them. I
Yes.
think.
I agree. They, they persevered through their challenges in a way that, I think as I look at our group of siblings, it's just a wonderful group of people. And we're all different and, a lot of different opinions, but everybody in our family is just a really good person, I think.
I agree with you. And I want to say that one thing that that was always pointed out by Mother and Daddy both. We would take Sunday drives often, and I remember them mostly in Toppenish, and to such pretty places, beautiful streams with green leaves and trees, and I'm surprised I have those memories when I had such poor eyesight, but I do. And then Mother loved to walk, and a few times we walked to church, and that was a long walk. But
Oh,
I remember her saying how much she loved seeing what you don't see when you're writing, pointing out that how much beauty there is in yards and places that when you're walking you see, but when you're writing you don't see.
hey, Kamillia, somebody's coming to the door.
Okay.
Pause. Just hang on. Just sec. I'm gonna pause the record. Okay. Well, let's wrap up. And
Well,
Kamillia,
I wanted to just wrap up with how much they both loved beauty, and
yes.
in music, in visually, and I did want to. Do you have 5 more minutes, and I'll tell quickly?
Sure. Go ahead.
Mother and I in Toppenish, I loved reading, and I went to the library, walked to the library in Toppenish, and would bring home as many books as they would let me, and then read them. And Mother read some of those books with me, and we enjoyed them together. The Betsy books it was a series, and it probably took place in about the 1890s or something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, and Girl of the Limberlost and My Friend Freckles, she wanted me to read, and we read those together. And
I remember her telling me to read those books, The Girl, the Limberlost, and My Friend Freckles. I don't know if I ever did, but I remember her mentioning those books to me.
Yes, she loved those, and I did read them, and as I recall, we read them together. Not that we didn't sit down and read together, but we would both read the books and then talk about them and share our thoughts or whatever our responses. Mother in Yakima wanted me to read The Robe, and I don't know if she read it at that time, but I did. And Mother was a reader. And of course, I know she loved to read the newspaper, not when I was a girl, but later. But she was a reader, and she had an inquiring mind.
Yeah.
It's really too bad, very much too bad, that Daddy and Mother weren't able to get an education, because they both were very inquisitive and thoughtful and bright people. But they gave us what they gave us, and I am so grateful.
Yes.
So grateful.
Yes.
And thank you, Artie. I want to say how grateful I am to you for doing this. And I also want to suggest that you contact Bruce.
Yeah,
Um,
I was planning on doing that. I thought I need to do this with each individual sibling and get everybody's memories about mom and dad.
Yes,
So,
he has lots of memories. They don't have anything to do with his eyesight or his beliefs versus yours or anything. Just his memories
yeah,
of mother and daddy. And
yeah,
he was very special to mother and she to him. And so I think it would be great if you could do that. So
yeah.
thank you, Artie. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your memories here.